Our favorite podcaster, Joe Rogan, thinks critics of Jason Aldean's Try That in a Small Town are hypocrites. Let's watch.
People are upset at the country music channel. Because the Jason Aldean song, Try That in a Small Town.
Yeah.
The level of outrage, now, I'm not saying that that's the greatest song the world's ever known, but the level of outrage coming from people that are upset about that song is so strange when there are hundreds of rap songs out there that are infinitely worse and also enjoyable.
Misogynistic, glorifying violence, the whole thing. Yeah.
And no complaints at all.
Yeah.
And we're not even talking about old stuff. There's new stuff too. There's hip hop, there's wild rock songs, there's a lot of wild shit. And to be focusing on that one, and it's the racial aspect of it was crazy because the real Antifa problems that were happening during the BLM, I think it was a lot of white people doing that, wasn't it? It was a lot of lost liberal whites who are very angry, who decided to take up this movement and smash things. So the racial aspect of it, there's nothing racial about the lyrics. People are upset.
A lot of wisdom from Joe Rogan there. And he, he's not trying to make the old fogey criticism that, these rap lyrics are just too, I don't want my kids hearing for that. No, stop. But he wasn't saying that. He was just saying it's a little bit of a double standard to be really mad about this song. If viewers recall, this Jason Aldean song, Try That in a Small Town, has some lyrics about how, some honestly questionable in terms of their being right on the policy about how you can't get away with doing crime or stuff in small towns. Many small towns have high crime rates as well, so it's not. Now, many cities have high crime rates, and some places are getting worse than others. But to call out that double standard, I think is fair. And also, he's totally right that the Antifa people were all white people. So I hope we're all agreed on that.
I think what's interesting about this is I don't know that Jason Aldean is the one that should take the fall. I think there were a lot of decisions made by the label. Oftentimes labels make decisions to stir up controversy because that does drive streams of the music video. And I think Jason Aldean could have written this song and been like, I'm denouncing violence against people. This feels right for me. I don't credit Jason Aldean as being fully aware of every political message in the music video and even in the lyrics and the extent of how they might be interpreted. The site of the music video being the same site of the 1946 Columbia race riot, I don't even think Jason Aldean knew that, if I'm being honest with you. I think the label might have known that. I think the label might have seen that Jason Aldean's music isn't doing as well as it once was, and this could be something that could bring attention to him in a similar way to Morgan Wallen's recent controversies brought a lot of attention to his music and actually increased his streams. It could have been a decision they made purely from the business perspective, which goes to show how much labels have control over their musicians in a way where the musicians don't really have control over the message that their music ultimately puts out. That's a big problem when it comes to people's ability to control their art and how much they depend on a label to get their music out and produce their music when they might like to have more control about how their creative expression is portrayed. I think it's possible Jason Aldean could have just meant this as, don't be violent, and it's kind of the label's fault that imagery was overlaid and the site of it was at the Columbia race riot, and maybe they encouraged some of the lyrics in the song about, try it in a small town, spitting in a cop's face and letting up the flag, etc. That doesn't sound like something Jason Aldean would write, to be honest.
Well, and just to be clear, setting the flag on fire is First Amendment protected activity. So if you want to be all rah-rah patriot, rah-rah free speech, free expression, you don't have to like that, but that is explicitly protected by the First Amendment in that there was a Supreme Court case where they said you can do that action.
Right, but did the Constitution say, it's protected free speech unless you are in a small town, Robbie?
Right, no, it didn't. Even in a small town. I'm not a big fan of the song, personally. I'm not a big fan of country music. That's probably not super surprising to our viewers, who are, if they're coming to understand my tastes. But the reason we're talking about this is that CMT, Country Music Television, took action against this song in a way that they never would have. I mean, it's a country station, but a station would not have taken action against a rap song with much more evocative of violence or gangs or something like that, is the argument conservatives are making, and that Joe Rogan was talking about there.
Yeah, I feel like just gang violence and making a statement about protests against police violence are just like incomparable issues. It's very apples and oranges to me to compare those two things. Yeah, absolutely. Because think about the genesis of gangs in America. You had chattel slavery in the United States. You had a lot of African Americans, denied integration into the formal economy in the U.S. A lot of them became sharecroppers. They essentially had to sell their lives in a similar way, whereas instead of just them being slaves forced to do the labor, they basically had no other economic opportunity. And so they said, okay, I'll work on this farm doing very similar labor to my grandparents and parents did who were slaves. And then, many of them didn't get protection from the police because the police was an institution that came out of slave patrols, and there wasn't a lot of options for a lot of folks. And forming gangs for not only the protection of themselves, their family, and their neighborhoods, but also to have economic opportunity because they were rejected from joining the formal economy. I mean, you can blame the state for that circumstance. And so the police continually brutalizing Black Americans and then resulting or taking the action of rioting, which Martin Luther King Jr. said is the voice of the unheard or the message of the unheard. After so many years of police brutality, Jim Crow, new imaginations and iterations of Jim Crow that we still see today, gerrymandering districts. We just had the Supreme Court hear a case about this. The continual, murder of unarmed Black men, and the result being riots. To say that violence is the same as the gang violence is just not seeing the continuity of history there, and so I don't think that's a comparison.
But gang violence today is just it's just crime. It's just theft and crime and murder. I mean, you're right that at a time, and I by no means am claiming the police today are perfect. Far from it. I have a lot of criticisms of historical and modern policing in this country, and I take your point that. Even in immigrant communities, right? There's Irish gangs, Italian gangs, the mafia was providing protection to people in those communities that were, overlooked and were not considered American and were not being, protected by the police. So I hear that. Today, I don't. I mean, today gangs in cities are responsible for an inordinate amount of violent crime and theft and assault and clashes with police and are not, I don't think, are not desired by the people in those communities at all.
What I think about this song specifically, when I think about the reaction to it, it's not a song people want to listen to. It doesn't have a lot of streams because people are bumping it in their car like,
I don't know. People, don't yuck their yum. People might not you or I, but there might be people who are. Clearly there are.
I think they're streaming it because of the controversy. I think they're streaming it because they think it sends a political message. I think they're streaming it to observe and partake in the drama of it all. I don't think they're streaming it because it's good music. I don't think hearing those lyrics genuinely makes people like, I don't think people like to think about politics in that sense when they're listening to country music and the divisions among people in our country. Country music used to be a lot of folk music, a lot of fighting the man, not defending the actions of the man and the people who protest against the man. So I think a lot has changed. And I think this is a political stunt to get more views by his label.
Fair enough. Well, tomorrow on Rising, Jessica will be here. I will not. Amber Athey will be taking my place for Rising Fridays, and they will be delivering all the news that there is going on. But this has been a really fun week. Thank you for filling in for Brianna.
I've enjoyed a week of Robbenheimer. It's been good.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Brianna will be back next week. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any of our content, and we will see you later. Bye-bye.